Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Common Sense Guys channel, or as some of you may know me better as Jason. How are you all doing today? No, I am not officially back just yet, but I have actually just seen a news article in which has really got my goat. And no, I don't mean the greatest of all time, I mean it's really pissed me off like a billy. So, the BBC, for people that don't understand this, is supposed to be under a licensing tax agreement between the government and the citizenry, or in other words, the people who get taxed. So one would assume that the people that are getting taxed to be able to pay for this license, if you so choose to call it that, in other words, a taxation law, then it would have to stay in this country, wouldn't it? As it would be funded by the people and it would be for the people, so to speak, wouldn't it? Well, no, apparently not. It actually broadcasts across the whole of the EU and is actually thinking of moving towards Brussels after Brexit so it can still have its headquarters in a European country so it can broadcast across the rest of the European continent. Yes, that's right. Not a international corporation, but a tax funded operation or cooperative, if you so choose to use that word, that is run and funded by the British people is going international to the point of actually wanting its own headquarters in Brussels. Yes, that's what I was thinking. Let's get into the story and actually hit this story as hard as we can. I've got a lot of talk about this, so let's get into it. So, as you can see, it says there, BBC considers setting up international base in Belgium after Brexit. So, if for some reason that Brexit does not go in the way in which the BBC wants it to, and for some reason the licensing laws don't let the BBC broadcast across the whole of the European Union's continent, then they're going to move to the European Union's continent and have an HQ there, so they can continue broadcasting across the rest of the continent. Now, I understand what some of the arguments would be. Some of the arguments would be, well, the reason why they want to broadcast across the rest of the continent is because there are so many expats or so many people that have moved away from Britain or even on holiday from Britain that would like to have the BBC and put that across and everything else like that. I don't actually have a problem with that. I kind of understand what the reasoning is and I kind of understand where that is going. My actual gripe though is with the BBC itself, in where they actually are going to move a headquarters or a new EU base to be able to just broadcast across the European Union or European continent. That is what a corporation would do. That is what a free market business would do. See, the BBC is a taxable product. It's like me saying, well, the NHS is now okay for it to be able to move across to France and is okay to operate with the funding from the British people still funding this, by the way, as well, to be able to operate in France or Germany or even in some other country, wherever you would like to choose in the European Union. That's in which this taxation and taxable company, if you will, or corporation or conglomerate, if whatever word you want to use for the BBC, is going. It's the fact that it is a taxable service that is provided and produced by the British people. Yet, like if I use an example, the NHS, if it moved to another country, it would then not be a taxable service that is produced and run by the British people for the British people. It is then a business, which I have no problem in the BBC becoming a business if it so chooses and wants to be a business. But don't get your funding from taxing the British people if you want it to be a business and run in the rest of the European Union. In that case, cut your ties, cut your funding from the British Broadcasting Corporation, from the actual UK government, and make it your own British Broadcasting Company. Surely that would be the correct way of being able to do this and doing this legitimately. But let's move on and let's find out a little bit more about what's going on, shall we? So, the BBC is considering Brussels as a location for a new EU base after Brexit to allow it to continue to broadcast across the continent. Again, you know my principles on that. It's fine if it was an actual company that is not funded by the British people. Again, one last time to reiterate my point, it is like the NHS being funded by the British people, then moving to France. Still having a portion of the NHS here, but still having the NHS in France and it being controlled by the British people. It does not make sense as a taxable service from the UK. So Belgium's Prime Minister, Charles Michel, has disclosed that he held discussions on the possibility in Davos with the BBC Director General Tony Hall. So this is not just a pie in the sky situation. Belgium's Prime Minister has actually come out and said, no, this is actually something that we'll be negotiating as a business for the BBC to be able to come to Brussels. Why is that then? Why is that? I know that a lot of people that are in the comment section are going to go, well, it's so that they can broadcast across the rest of the continent. Yeah, okay. Why not move to the Republic of Ireland then? Because all they need to do for the license to continue is to move to a European country. So to speak, if they don't change the deal, or if they're English or UK don't change the deal, as it stands. So why can't they go to the Republic of Ireland then? Why is it that they have deemed to go to Brussels, which is one of the capitals of the EU, to be able to do this? It suggests that it wants to keep ties with a European government for some aspects. Later on down the line, could there be two forms of branches of the BBC that is still being funded by the British people? One that is just a BBC for the UK, and the other one is World BBC or International BBC, that is being funded by the British people and is being used by the European people? Does that make sense for a taxable service to be able to be run as that? To me, it doesn't. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section down below, please. It is understood that the BBC is also looking at the Netherlands and Ireland as potential sites of the new offshoot. Well, that's good. If it uses Ireland, at least we could say that it is still in the Isles of the United Kingdom. Now, yes, I know that Republic of Ireland is not actually part of the United Kingdom, but you could say and argue that it is part of the Isles, the islands of the United Kingdom. You could argue that. The BBC will need EU-based license for its international channels, which again is still funded by the British public, not funded by the European Union, which include BBC World, BBC Entertainment, BBC First and BBC Earth. Again, which is all absolutely fine, it's just the fact that having a base outside of the UK would mean that you are no longer a taxable service that is providing for the UK citizenry. It is as simple as that. Turn yourself into a corporation or actual business, and then you would be absolutely fine to do whatever you want and be in whatever country that you want and produce whatever news that you want, rather than getting the British public to be funding you to be able to do that. So the Prime Minister has been seeking to include the audiovisual industry in a free trade agreement to avoid the problem, but her pleas have been ignored. I have no problem with her being able to put that into that sort of a deal, Theresa May, trying to get that into the licensing agreement and everything else like that. I have no problems with that. The problem that I have, as I will reiterate and put down in this because I feel that it needs to be browbeated, is that a taxable commodity, the same as the NHS, being sent abroad to be able to operate abroad while still being funded by the British people. You are still trying to operate as an independent company. It is the same, and I use this as people to understand, the NHS operating as such in France, Germany, Estonia, Poland, wherever, while still being funded by the British people. It would make that form of the NHS in the European Union, wherever it may be, not part of the United Kingdom, and yet still funded by the British people. That would make no sense for it to be a taxable service for the UK citizenry. France has consistently defended the exclusion of audiovisual services from free trade agreements, which is an essential issue which concerns the protection of cultural diversity. Wait, so you would love to have mass immigration of all kinds and any kinds, but yet when it comes to having any sort of form of corporation or news outlet, if you will, operating in your country, which is basically one or two or maybe three channels in the whole of the channels that could be in every country. So you're saying that having mass immigration is cultural diversity and doesn't need to be protection of your own culture, but having a couple of channels on a TV station or TV in general is going to destroy your cultural diversity and you need to protect your own because of it. Does anybody else actually understand what cultural diversity even means anymore? Where one, you're going to have mass immigration come into play, and then that is nothing to worry about. That is culturally diverse and nothing to worry about and everything's fine. But then a couple of TV channels is now an attack on your own culture. That just seems absolutely ridiculously ludicrous, does it not? Does it not just seem like a flimsy excuse, a word to be thrown to be accepted as a dog whistle? I'll let you guys decide on that one. Our country has made it a major point in every trade negotiation and has thus obtained in all the free trade agreements the EU has concluded the exclusion of audiovisual services. But that's the point though, Mr. Macron. Just because you disagree with it, if the rest of the European Union agrees with it, it doesn't matter what you bloody think. It doesn't matter what the French people think. If the rest of the European Union decides that it's a good idea to have audiovisual services in your country, guess what, sunshine? You're fucked! As a result, to secure a pan-EU broadcast license, the BBC will need to have either its head office HQ, or a significant part of the workforce of the relevant channel, or a satellite uplink in a member state to qualify for a license there. A demand which could lead the broadcaster moving some stuff and operations into the EU. Again, let's reread that and understand what the implications could be from this. The BBC need to either move its head office, meaning that if it moves its head office or a massive chunk of its operational workforce, then it would then be split at least, or have a major operation outside of the UK and have its base of operations outside of the UK. Again, put that in perspective. That is like having the massive trustees or trusts being operated from outside of the UK in the NHS. That is what this is. This is a taxable service, license fee service that is now considered a tax since 2015 by government ratification, that the BBC is a taxable service, meaning that it is and should be solely provided or concentrating on providing services for the UK citizenry or the UK citizens. But yet, it wants to move to a different country to be able to operate so it can broadcast in the EU states. Does anybody else here see the problem of having a English or UK tax based service that is based in another country? especially considering that we are leaving the EU, and if its base of headquarters, or a former base of headquarters, is in the EU, does that mean that they would then be influenced, should we say, as a nice term, to be able to be nice to the country or the states in which they are in? Or would they still be a non-partisan group that's just reporting on the news? I wonder, I wonder, I wonder. A BBC Studio spokesperson said, BBC Studios, a commercial arm of the BBC, operates a number of bespoke TV channels outside of the UK, including some that are broadcast in the European Union. We will be keeping the situation under close review to ensure that we continue to best serve our audiences in any change regulatory environment. Even if it's a commercial division, the commercial division is still being funded, in part at least, by the British people, still making it a taxable service, as the BBC as a whole is completely funded by the TV licensing. Interesting that, isn't it? So the last little bit of this is the BBC sources said that they were decision making and workforce requirements, but that they expect the number of staff employed in the new base to be limited in number, except if it's the actual HQ base for the particular departments that have to actually work there. So that would mean, with the British Broadcasting Company that is funded by the British people, would they employ British people to go out to their new departmental headquarters that would be out in the EU countries, wherever it may be? Or would they enforce locally sourcing the jobs from wherever they may be, whether that be in Belgium, Poland, wherever? Would they give jobs to the local people? Which, I don't have a problem with either way, not really, but the problem that I do have is that if it is funded by the British people, which it is, as it's a taxable service, as deemed by 2015 ratification from the government, that would mean that surely that the people that would be at least working in those facilities or working in those areas would at least be UK citizens. Surely. But either way, it doesn't really matter. The problem that I have is that this is a service that is completely and utterly funded by the UK government and the UK people. Why on earth should we fund, as the British people, a company that wants to expand its licensing to be able to transmit across the rest of the European Union, when by its name is the British Broadcasting Company? Let me know what you guys think about all of this and this situation in the comment section down below. Let me know if you think this is a good idea for a taxed licensing fee from the BBC to separate itself and have different interests in different places. As in, if you have one headquarters in the BBC in the UK, would it have a conflict of influence or a conflict of interests if it is in the EU as well? So would they separate? Would they separate by a natural evolution of being in different places? Would the evolution of ideas change from being in different places? But most importantly, would that be ethical for a British funded system by taxation be allowed to go into another country to be able to operate? Is that something that we as British people should allow or should instigate or should accept? Let me know all of your comments in the comment section down below. I am very interested in finding out what's going on in this. So that being said, everybody, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out my new videos if you are so inclined to. If you can and you like the way that my videos are done, or if you want me to do some more videos in any sort of way, or even put any sort of input into what videos I do, don't forget to join me on Patreon, where you can join me for as little as $1 a month, and will help me a great deal in being able to make better content and being able to produce more stuff. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Bye bye for now.